The Washington Commanders made a statement in 2024, so it's time the NFL showcases them more in 2025 with a game in Spain and multiple primetime matchups. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, David Harrison, here with you every Monday through Friday. Your eyes, your ears, your friend on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA9.com, your local CBS affiliate, and also doing it for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. I want to thank you for coming through for today's episode, another episode of Locked On Commanders. And everydayers, those of you who come through every single day, a special thank you to you for doing so every single day. We're going to talk about the week one matchup, Dallas Cowboys at Philadelphia Eagles. I do have something to say about it, so we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're also going to talk mostly about the Washington Commanders schedule, trying to project some things. I won't call them predictions so much, but more so looking at what could happen and also kind of looking at some things that we would like to see happen. My 3 game wishes are going to be leading off the show today. If you're new to the show, thank you for giving it a try. I'm glad that you found us. Hopefully you like what you hear or what you see. Locked On Commanders is a daily podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So hopefully you come back again soon. And everybody out there, if you're not already subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode, please take the time to do so right now. So the Washington Commanders, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Highly recommend it. We'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. So the Washington Commanders schedule will officially be released Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. is when the NFL is planning on officially releasing everything. Of course, there's going to be leaks. There's going to be rumors. There's going to be some games. I know on Monday alone, early Monday, we found out that the Dallas Cowboys are going to visit the Philadelphia Eagles to start off the entire NFL season in week one, Thursday Night Football, September 4th, if I remember correctly. And we'll find out some other stuff. I know like Fox, Prime Video, we're scheduled to release a couple of games or a game or two here or there on Monday as well. And then Tuesday, the international games will come out. And then on Wednesday, the full thing will come out. And of course, there's going to be leaks and everything else. It's a fun time, I suppose, but it's also kind of a crazy time. Just another example of the fact that the NFL is king of at least American professional sports when something like the schedule release can dominate, so many headlines and so much attention from people. So I thought we'd start off this pre-schedule release episode looking at some wishes, right? I've got 3 game wishes. I've got a lot of game wishes, right? But my top 3 game wishes, which games, when I want them, things like that. Not necessarily like the biggest games of the year per se, but just 3 games that I've kind of have some specific asks. If I could ask the NFL schedule makers to grant me 3 wishes, these would be them. The first one is going to be when the Washington Commanders face the Miami Dolphins. I want that to happen in week 11, and I want it to happen in Madrid, Spain. Now, insiders knows we've been having some conversations. I was real heavy. Going back to last year, like the last season was still being played. I was real heavy. I was like, Commanders, Dolphins, Madrid, Spain. As soon as that game was announced, I was like, let's make that happen. It makes a lot of sense. Tua Tagovailoa versus Jaden Daniels. You got Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Dolphins, ultimate personality in the NFL. Dan Quinn, their connection together. Of course, the Washington Commanders are kind of like that new, sexiness or whatever. The Miami Dolphins, if they're healthy, they're a team that likes to light up the scoreboard, go deep, throw deep passes, do all those things. So it's a great matchup for the NFL to showcase overseas. Furthermore, the Washington Commanders, one of only a few teams. I think there's like 4 teams in the NFL that have only played one overseas game or one international game, I should say, in the entire time the NFL has been doing these international games. The Commanders are one of them. So this would be their second international game. Hopefully this one doesn't end the way the first one did. The first one ended in a tie with the Cincinnati Bengals. Hopefully this one wouldn't do it. But also, selfishly, I want to go to Spain. Never been to Spain, so I'd like to go to Spain. So so there is a rumor out, unsubstantiated, unconfirmed, but there is a rumor out that the Washington Commanders are going to play the Miami Dolphins in Madrid, Spain. And according to the date, supposedly leaked, if you want to call it that, or rumored or speculated about, that game will take place week 11, right? So that's, of course, I want that to be true. I've kind of come off of that, right? Again, I've had this conversation with insiders, kind of come off of that for certain reasons. But I've always kind of held out that hope, like, please let it be true. Please let it be true. That, the Commanders are going to finally return to an international game, and they're going to do it in a country that I really want to go to, that I've never been to. Would love to spend a week or so, give or take a couple days, in Madrid, Spain, week 11. The great thing about that too is that the rule is if you play an international game, you have to have your bye week comes after that. So if the Commanders play week 11 in Madrid against the Miami Dolphins, then the bye week would be week 12. Week 12, in my mind, is the perfect week to have your bye because it's 66% of the way through your schedule, at least 11 games. 11 games is 66% of your scheduled games. Therefore, you get the break, you get to rest, you get to heal, you get to recuperate a little bit. You come back, you only have 33% of your regular season left, and then you get into the postseason. So I think week 12 is kind of like that sweet spot for the bye week. So you get to go to Madrid. Usually teams, fly families and stuff out there. I'm sure the Washington Commanders are going to do that as well. Enjoy, some of the sites. Obviously, it's a work trip, but you enjoy some of the sites. Get to help grow the game outside of American borders. So let's make that happen, folks. Let's make that happen. Week 11 in Madrid, week 12 bye week. Plus, I don't want to go to Miami. No offense to I like Miami. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Miami traffic. And if you've ever been to Miami or if you're from Miami, again, love Miami. Hate the traffic. Don't want to go to Miami this season. So this would, two birds, one stone, right? Second wish, if I can make my wishes to the NFL scheduling, I don't know if you call them gods, but schedule makers. Week 2, I want the Detroit Lions in Washington. Detroit Lions facing the Washington Commanders, NFC divisional round matchup, rematch. Let it, you know what I mean? Let's go toe to toe. Everybody is talking about, everybody not, a fan of Washington or even a media member covering Washington is talking about the Detroit Lions were the best team in the NFC last year. And, if it wasn't for the injuries. And again, the convenient thing that everybody keeps forgetting about when they talk about that is the Detroit Lions defense was the one that had the significant injuries on it. Okay, granted, but the Washington Commanders came in with a top 5 scoring offense regardless. So it's not like you're talking about a 30th ranked scoring offense coming into Detroit and putting up a bunch of points against the defense that was wounded. No, like the Commanders offense did what they normally do anyway. And yeah, the Lions defense might have been able to stop them a little bit better if it wasn't for these injuries. But the other side of the ball, I remember the big thing was like, David Montgomery is back. David Montgomery's healthy again. There's no way this Commanders defense is going to stop this Lions offense. 5 turnovers later, the Commanders defense definitely stopped that Detroit Lions offense. So I think you kind of missed me with all the, but injuries and all this stuff. No, I think the Commanders went in there and they won a backyard brawl very, very fairly. And I think they did it in very convincing fashion. So let's bring the Lions back. Let's bring them into Washington. Let's try to get it week 2 before the injuries, start to settle in. Hopefully nobody gets hurt in training camp week 1. Hopefully nobody gets injured at all, right? But let's bring them in week 2 and let's just settle this. Now, of course, Detroit Lions no longer have Ben Johnson. They no longer have Aaron Glenn. New OC, new DC. So, of course, that'll be the storyline. But, hey, look, it is what it is at the end of the day. And then finally, if we're going to have our home opener week 2 against the Detroit Lions, let's start the season. I'm gonna sacrifice a little bit of selfishness here. Start the season on the road. I was actually having this conversation a little bit with an insider. I would prefer a home opener because I like to get my season started without having to fly or get hotels. Just kind of like let me get in the groove with a little bit of comfort, right? But the majority of the games this year are road games because of the back and forth split. So let's get a road game out of the way early, but let's make it one that I could drive to. I might fly to it, but I could drive to it if I wanted to. The Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Dan Quinn's going back to Atlanta as a head coach for the first time since being fired. Bring him back there with his new quarterback. Again, do it right off the bat, minimize the opportunity for injuries to derail anything. Raheem Morris has experience, with Washington, obviously on the coaching staff. You got Michael Penix Jr., first-round draft pick quarterback from last year. Jaden Daniels, first-round quarterback from last year. You know what I mean? Let's get this thing going the right way in Atlanta, week 1. So those would be my 3 wishes. If I could make wishes to the NFL schedule makers, week 11 in Miami, quote unquote, but actually in Madrid, Spain. Week 2 at home against the Detroit Lions. Week 1 on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Those are my 3 wishes. Now, let's talk about coming up next. Let's talk about going to Lambeau in September and closing out the schedule in Philadelphia. I've got all 17 games, I don't want to say predicted, projected for you coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Literally just happened to me the other day, and my wife, for about the 586th time in our marriage, rolled her eyes a little bit. Between dining, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. For me, it's DoorDash. I love when my kids say they're hungry and it's like middle of the day and they want like a snack or something. I love being able to provide it for them. So to me, it's worth the DoorDash fees and the tip and all that stuff. And I do it. And the next thing you know, I'm like, where's all my money? Well, Monarch Money can help you. And Monarch Money has helped me be better about it. It's also helped my family manage our business. We have our own LLC. Our media corporation is our own business. And so we have our personal CFO with Monarch Money. That isn't just a budgeting app, but a complete financial command center. It tracks all of our accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So we can stop just tracking our spending of our money, actually build a little bit of wealth, save a little bit for the future, like trips to Spain, right? Those things are expensive. So use Monarch Money, take control of your finances. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Continuing now with today's episode of Locked On Commanders, talking about the 2025 NFL schedule. The Washington Commanders schedule is set to come out officially on Wednesday. Monday morning, we found out the Dallas Cowboys will be visiting the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1. So we know that the Washington Commanders will not be facing the Philadelphia Eagles or the Dallas Cowboys in week 1. So a little bit of the equation solved. There's still supposed to be a couple of games coming out on Monday. Not sure what time those are getting released officially, but those can come at any moment here. But I went through and I projected, right? Because I'm not going to call it predictions, kind of like a mock draft. It's not so much about getting every single slot right. It's more so about looking at kind of what could happen and how you think it might happen, those types of things. So one of the first things I wanted to kind of do was look at Green Bay and where's the ideal spots for the Washington Commanders to visit the Green Bay Packers. Why is this a big game? Well, 1, it's Lambeau Field. 2, it's a playoff matchup. The Green Bay Packers were in the playoffs. The Washington Commanders were in the playoffs. So it's playoff caliber. 3, young quarterbacks that are jockeying or trying to position themselves to be the next kind of face of the league as quarterbacks. Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers, obviously Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders. And I was thinking about it, and again, kind of talking about that injury thing. Like, if you have this super sexy matchup on paper, it's one of those matchups like Commanders, Packers, not a lot of rivalry juice there, right? Not a lot of hatred between the two organizations. They didn't play each other in the playoffs last year, all that stuff. So if you want to get the most bang for your buck, if you're in the NFL, again, kind of going back to what we just talked about a little bit with some of these other games, you want to get it done as early as possible so that you have the best matchup possible. You run the least amount of risk of getting an injury to either team that is going to make that, is going to hinder that. And this would be, for me, week 3. And again, the Washington Commanders have more road games this year than they do home games because of the back and forth split. Last year, they had more road games in the regular, or more home games in the regular season than they did road games. So week 3 at Green Bay, to me, makes the most sense. So again, if I get my wishes, week 1, we're going to Atlanta for Commanders at Falcons, right? Dan Quinn goes back to Atlanta, all that stuff. First rounder versus first rounder, Michael Penix Jr. versus Jaden Daniels. Week 2, get back home, and then home opener against the Detroit Lions. Let's settle this thing, supposedly once and for all. Again, new OC, new DC, so Lions fans are going to have a built-in excuse no matter what. Week 3, let's get out to Lambeau. Let's get out to Lambeau Field. Again, it's an experience that I've been waiting for. I've never covered a game at Lambeau Field. Can't wait for the experience. For the Washington Commanders, the upside, obviously, better weather. You don't want to go to Lambeau in December, right? So maybe a little bit of a bias slant there in my projection here, right? But September in Green Bay sounds beautiful. So let's get that going there. So that's kind of number 1, right? So I kind of penciled that, and I penciled in my wishes, week 1, week 2, week 3. Now we've got the first 3 there. And I think we look at week 4. Is it going to be a 2-2 split? I think, honestly, you could very well see this team go from Green Bay, which is a little bit of a trip, not a massive trip, but a little bit of a trip, then go week 4 to New York. Let's go to New Jersey, drive up the turnpike. They're going to fly. We're going to drive, go face the New York Giants and rookie quarterback Jackson Dart, or whoever ends up starting, Russell Wilson out there, whoever ends up starting for the New York Giants. Let's go visit them and get that out of the way. So if that's correct in your first 4 weeks, so again, this isn't a completely biased or slanted schedule projection, right? Because I'm telling you, first 4 weeks, what I can see happening is week 1 in Atlanta, week 3 in Green Bay, week 4 in New York. Now, the good news is only one of those trips, you change time zones. Only one of those trips is, what you would consider relatively long, right? And then at home against the Detroit Lions. But fairly difficult stretch, right? 2 playoff teams back-to-back at home against the Lions, then on the road against the Packers. So 2 playoff teams there. Then you have 2 potentially young quarterbacks, depending on what happens with the Giants by week 4. So that's kind of the first 4 games there that I kind of see going. Now, I wanted to take a shift to the primetime games. I think the Washington Commanders very likely to get 3 primetime games this year. I think that week 2 home opener against the Detroit Lions could very well be a primetimer. I think week 10 against the Chicago Bears, I'm kind of giving away a little bit of the schedule that I have laid out here. Week 10 against the Chicago Bears, I think, look, you got the moment of the year last year where the Washington Commanders beat the Chicago Bears on that Hail Mary. I think the NFL is just licking their chops. Just get Caleb, get Jaden back out there. Caleb's got new coaches. Offensive line's been upgraded. Like, people are saying the Bears are doing things the right way now. So maybe week 10, the Bears are this year's Commanders, and they can come in and get the win that they probably should have had if it wasn't for Tyreek Stevenson anyway. So I think that could be like a Thursday nighter, something like that. And then at Kansas City, right now I've got that plugged in week 8. I think Patrick Mahomes, Jane Daniels, that's just got Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football written all over it. So most the Commanders can have is 6. The most any team can have is 6. I don't think they're going to get 6 right off the bat. That's usually like your Super Bowl champs, your perennial contenders for the Super Bowl, things like that. Not the team that was just an upstart last year that almost made it but didn't quite make it all the way. So that would give the NFL rather 3 more opportunities, however, to flex them into more primetime games. So if you look at it again, week 2, week 8, week 10. So from week 11 on, which week 11 is Madrid, week 12 is the bye week. So really week 13 to the end of the season, the NFL would have 3 opportunities if they wanted to flex the Washington Commanders into more primetime games. And it just so happens that I've got the end of this schedule wrapping up with 3 out of the last 4 games for the Washington Commanders at home. So we've got 3 out of the first 4 on the road, 3 of the last 4 at home. Week 15, I've got them at home against the Giants. Week 16 at home against the Raiders. Week 17 at home against the Cowboys before wrapping it up week 18 on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you're the NFL, if things are going super sexy, those things have playoff implications. Look, I think the Vegas Raiders could be a very big surprise team in the AFC this year. So if there's some playoff implications, gives you the opportunity to potentially flex some of those games into primetime. So you get 3 times. You get Jaden Daniels on primetime 3 times no matter what. And then at the NFL, you protect 3 other times to potentially flex them in. So that's kind of how I look at the primetime breakdown. So the full schedule, again, I've already wrapped up the first quarter. Week 1 at Atlanta. Week 2 at home against Detroit. Week 3 in Green Bay. Week 4 in New York to face the Giants. Then we get to October, the next 4 games in October at home against the Broncos, on the road against Dallas in week 6. I don't have a Thanksgiving game there. Week 7 back home against the Eagles. So you get Cowboys, Eagles back to back. Then you get the Chiefs. So that's going to be a tough road to hoe. Broncos playoff team last year, Eagles obviously, Chiefs obviously. So 5, 7, 8. You've got 3 playoff teams in that 4-game span. Remember to start the season, Lions, Packers. You've got 2 playoff teams back to back to start that stretch. So you've got 5 playoff teams, I should say, in your first 8 games for the Commanders. So again, much better or much harder schedule this year than what they faced last year. Into November, week 9 in Minnesota. I can see that happening. Week 10, again, coming back in Chicago, potentially a primetime game before heading over to Spain to play Miami in week 11. You got the week 12 bye coming out of Spain. Week 13 back home against Seattle into December. Week 14 on the road to Los Angeles to face the Rams. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm probably not going to Los Angeles. Not a fan of that Los Angeles trip. We'll see. We'll see how I feel when the time comes, whenever that time actually comes. But unless there's like a huge storyline or playoff implication, something like that, if I have an excuse to skip LA, I'm going to skip LA. Week 15, 16, 17 at home, Giants, Raiders, then Cowboys, and then finally week 18, ending the season in Philadelphia. If the NFL gets their way, man, the Commanders Eagles will be playing for that NFC East division title there in week 18. So that's kind of how I see the schedule wrapping up. One of the games we found out about early in the morning on Monday was the season opener. Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles starting the season. And man, do I have beef with that. So we'll talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up this episode of Locked On Commanders, talking about the 2025 NFL schedule release, doing a little bit of projections, doing some wish list stuff, some primetime game speculation, things like that. And we're going to wrap it up here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles week 1 season opener, right? Thursday night football. It's become the tradition. The Super Bowl champion hosts the very first game of the year. It happens on Thursday night of week 1. And the NFL is always trying to look for like a super sexy matchup, right? Rivalries are a lot of times are the focus of it. You know, playoff rematches a lot of times are the focus of it. And this year, look, they went the rivalry route. They went Dallas Cowboys at Philadelphia Eagles to start the season. And look, I get it. All right. As much as we all kind of probably hate to admit it, like the Cowboys still have the largest fan base of all the NFL teams, if not the largest, one of the largest, certainly up there. Right. They're certainly not quote unquote America's team. They're Dallas's team. Sure. Texas's team. You could probably make that case, even though the Houston Texans obviously have their following, like the majority of Texans are probably Cowboys fans. Got it. But they're not America's team, right? The Philadelphia Eagles go to the Super Bowl. Listen, the NFL watching public deserves a marquee matchup, not a logo matchup. They deserve playoff contenders. They deserve championship contenders. They deserve a team that honestly earned the right to open the season in front of everybody. Like, this is the first game. So even the people who hate, like me, like even the people who hate the fact that this is the opening game, we're still going to watch this game. You know what I mean? Because it's the first real NFL game of the year. So it should mean something. If you're going to make special consideration for it, it should mean something. The Philadelphia Eagles have 8 teams coming to Philadelphia this year. The playoff teams they have coming, the Washington Commanders, the Detroit Lions, the Denver Broncos, the Los Angeles Rams. The non-playoff teams they have coming, Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, Chicago Bears, and Las Vegas Raiders. So you have 4 options that are playoff teams to bring them in. I know a lot of people wanted Detroit Lions against Philadelphia Eagles. Again, the Lions were the best team in the NFC. Let's send them to Philadelphia for week 1. I disagree. I think, again, the Commanders won fair and square. And honestly, yeah, I'd have loved to see the Washington Commanders go to Philly week 1. Let's get an NFC Championship game rematch. But even if not, like even if you want to go Denver Broncos, all right, Bo Nix, runner-up for an NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Sean Payton, legendary head coach, has a Super Bowl title under his belt. Do that. Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay has a very, big name. Matt Stafford running it back. The Los Angeles Rams bounced the Green Bay Packers out of the playoffs last year. We're very, very close to beating the Eagles last year. Let's run that back. Any of those matchups would have been good. I think the Denver Broncos probably would have been the worst of the 4, right? But any of those matchups would have been good. Here, what we have is we have the Dallas Cowboys, and we have this star basically being crammed down all of our throats once again. And honestly, there's no win here for the NFL. Like, I guess you could say there's a win if it's a close game, right? But if it's a close game, what's everybody going to say? Oh, the Eagles are frauds. Eagles, they got figured out. They're not going to be able to do it again. And you're going to have all that Eagles drama going up again. If the Dallas Cowboys get boat raced, congrats, NFL. Like, thanks for putting a blowout in week 1. And look, blowouts can happen at any time. I mean, the Washington Commanders lost by multiple scores in the NFC Championship game, right? So blowouts can happen. But when you put a non-playoff team on the schedule, this is the NFL equivalent to putting an FCS team against the SEC team in week 1 and expecting everybody to show up and give you flowers for making it. I think that the opening game of the year, if you're going to make it special, which we've done by putting it on Thursday night by itself, if we're going to make it special, make it special. I think there needs to be a qualifier on both sides. The Super Bowl winner hosts it, fantastic. If you are the only teams that are eligible to play in that first game have to be playoff teams, because then you always have this story. Like when it was Chiefs, Ravens, Buccaneers, Cowboys, you have this story. And the Cowboys made the playoffs here before that, by the way. There's a playoff caliber team that's probably about to start 0-1. And that's not like the end of the world, sure. But what always happens? Oh, the Kansas City Chiefs are 0-1 now. They just fell to a playoff contender. How are they going to rebound? Look at their schedule ahead. Oh, they got like 3 more playoff teams coming in the next 5 games. Man, they could be, 2-4 by the time this whole thing. Like, that's where, you get a lot of this buzz and stuff like that. So again, I think that if you're going to make it a big deal, which again, we're isolating it, so it is a big deal, then it needs to have a qualifier to it. Plus, think about it. You're giving these teams a pseudo bye. This is a Thursday night game. They're going to play their next game Sunday, Monday. You know what I mean? Let them play Monday, then they really get a pseudo bye week. And you're giving this advantage to a team that, quite frankly, didn't earn it the year before. So that's just the way I feel about it. Call it whatever you want. Call it an opinion, call it a take, call it whining. That's fine. I don't care. I don't like it. But I'm going to watch it. So hopefully you guys are going to watch the next episode of Locked On Commanders. Thank you for watching this episode of Locked On Commanders. Between now and then, we're going to do a little bit of ideating on the subject. I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a 53-man roster projection, post-rookie minicamp, pre-OTA, 53-man roster projection, just kind of looking at where we see things as they stand right now. So it'll be a lot of fun. And, of course, we got a mailbag coming up later this week. So if you want to get in on that, submit your questions, submit your topics. All you have to do is text me. To do that, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Become a Locked On Commanders insider today. You get to impact the show, but you also get real-time information from me during events, inside information from time to time, lots of cool stuff like that. And I think that the insiders, for the most part, appreciate and enjoy their experiences. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves never stop. Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino are going to make you the most informed NFL fans this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this very podcast. As always, I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every dayers. Thanks for coming through every single day. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, so I can see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.